Hello everyone, Archana is here. Welcome to the second session of presentation, ICSE Class 9, Paper 2, Literature in English. In today's session, let us deal with the prose, Chief Seattle's Speech by Seattle. About the author. Chief Seattle was a public leader, the chief of the Native American, Red Indian, Squamish and Duwamish tribes. The American city Seattle is named after him. He is especially known for his speech, or sometimes referred to as letter, delivered in 1854. Seattle, who earned his reputation at a young age as a leader and a warrior, was born around 1780 near Blake Island, Washington. He was known widely for ambushing and defeating groups of tribal enemy raiders coming up the Green River from the Cascade foothills and attaching the Chimakum, the Slalom tribes living on the Olympic Peninsula. Like many of his contemporaries, he owned slaves captured during his raids. He was tall and broad for a Puget Sound native, standing nearly 6 feet tall. Hudson's Bay Company traders gave him the nickname Lee Gross, the big guy. He was also known as an orator, and when he addressed an audience, his voice was loud and bold. But gradually, he lost some ground to the more powerful Pitcairn of the Snohomish when white settlers started showing up in force around 1850. When his people were driven from their traditional climbing grounds, Seattle happened to meet Dr. Maynard in Olympia. Both developed friendly relationship with each other, persuading the settlers at the white settlement of Duwamish to rename their town Seattle. Dr. Maynard lent their support to Chief Seattle and his people. This speech was a response to the American government's land treaty to buy the native lands proposed by Isaac Stevens, the governor of Washington Territory. Seattle's speech is regarded as a powerful plea for respect of Native American rights and environmental values. Seattle criticized the white people's imperialistic attitude and their way of reckless developments affecting the natural environment. In fact, it was one of the earliest instances where someone expressed great concern over the degradation of nature and ecological balance. He warned us against the rapid progress of Western civilization and pitched for the need to protect nature. And this is why Chief Seattle's speech is acclaimed with such high esteem. Seattle delivered the speech in his native language, Lachute Seed, and it has been translated and rewritten by several authors since then. Therefore, the authenticity of the available text is not confirmed. The oldest available record of this document is Henry A. Smith's transcript published in the Seattle Sunday Star in 1887, but modern critics see it as a flowery Victorian prose, far from about the original speech of Seattle. It is a speech delivered by Chief Seattle in 1854 at Washington. It contains arguments in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of Native Americans' land rights. He hopes that their good father in Washington would protect them and his brave warriors would prove to be a great wall of strength. Chief Seattle, in his speech, he persuaded the path of accommodation to white settlers in the U.S. state of Washington. His speech contained arguments in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of Native Americans' land rights. He recollects the hostilities that existed between the white and his tribal people, that is, the red children. He thinks that his old tribal people will never like to resume the old hostilities. He hopes that their good father in Washington would protect them. He realizes that they, that is, the white man and red children, are two distinct races. There is little common in them. In his speech, he makes a reference to the proposition which he had received from the white man. He hopes that his people will react favorably to the proposition and accept it, but he puts a condition before they take a decision. He wants his people to have freedom to visit the tombs of their ancestors, friends, and children at any time. He opines that the deserted streets at night will be thronged with the returning hosts that once filled them and still love this beautiful land. Chief Seattle, who belonged to Suquamish tribe, delivered this speech at Washington in 1854. He was a reputed and a prominent figure among his tribal people. In his impressive speech, he pursued the path of accommodation to white settlers in the U.S. state of Washington. In his speech, he gave powerful arguments in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of Native Americans' land rights. The white great chief, George Washington, the first president of the United States of America, is the great chief at Washington. The great chief at Washington wishes to buy the land of the Native Americans with words of feigned goodwill and friendship. Chief Seattle thanks the white great chief for acknowledging his greetings of friendship and goodwill. He praises the kindness and greatness of the white chief. He says that though he wishes to buy their land, he is willing to allow them liberty to live comfortably. He calls it a gesture of generosity. He recollects the time when the white began to push their forefathers westward. There were hostilities between them. He wishes that those hostilities may never return. The young men would like to take revenge, but the old tribal people are wise and would never like to resume the hostilities towards the whites. He hopes that their good father in Washington, that is, the great Chief Washington, would protect them, and his brave warriors would prove to be a great wall of strength against their ancient enemies who frightened their women, children, and the old men. Then, in reality, he would be their father and they would be his children. But he feels skeptical about one thing. He feels that the God of the white people loves his own people and hates the tribal people. Here, God of the white people, none other than Chief Washington. God of the white people loves his own people and hates the tribal people, that is, the red children, and therefore cannot be their God. He has abandoned his red children. He then refers to his own God, the Great Spirit, who also seems to have abandoned them. He complains that the God of the white people does not love his people and therefore does not protect them. They feel like he remarks that there are two distinct races. So here they feel like orphans who can look nowhere for help. It is in this context that he remarks that there are two distinct races with separate origins and separate destinies. There is little in common between them. What is that? Let us know. He then says that the white man's religion was written upon tablets of stone by the iron fingers of their God so that they could not forget. The red man could never comprehend or remember it, but their religion is the traditions of their ancestors. It constitutes the dreams of their old men and is written in the hearts of their people. He further remarks that their dead ceases to love them and the land of their nativity. But on the other hand, the dead of his race never forget their beautiful world that gave them their being. He says that the red man has always fled the approach of the white man, but the white man's proposition seems fair and he thinks that his people will accept it. He hopes that then they will dwell apart in peace. For a while, he mourns over the graves of his powerful people. But then he philosophizes that tribe follows tribe and nation follows nation, like the waves of the sea. It is the order of nature, and the regret is useless. He then remarks that they will ponder over their proposition and convey to them their decision. But before the decision, he puts a condition. The condition is that they will be free to visit the tombs of their ancestors, friends, and children at any time. Every part of this soil is sacred to them. The dead people of his race will love these somber solitudes. He thinks that when the last red man shall have perished, these shores will swarm with the invisible dead of his tribe. In all the earth, there is no place dedicated to solitude. At night, the deserted streets will be thronged with the returning hosts that once filled them and still love this beautiful land. Now, let's see the theme of the speech. Chief Seattle, a tribal from Suquamish community, strikes a note of reconciliation between his tribal people and the white people in his speech that he delivered at Washington in 1854. In his speech, he pursues the path of accommodation of white settlers in the US state of Washington. In his address, he gives arguments in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of Native Americans' land rights. He recollects the time when the hostilities existed between the white man and his tribal people, that is, the red children, but he no longer wants the hostilities to return. He strikes a hope in his speech that their good father in Washington would protect them, and his brave warriors would prove to be a great wall of strength against their ancient enemies. He regrets that the God of the white people has forsaken them. He feels sad that their own God, the Great Spirit, has also forsaken them. He is conscious of the fact that they, that is the white people and the tribal people, are two distinct races with separate origins and separate destinies. But he strikes a note of optimism when he says that his people are likely to accept the proposition sent by the white man because it seems to be reasonable and fair. But he is a little apprehensive to the proposition and so puts a condition before they take a decision. He wants his people to have full freedom to visit the tombs of their ancestors, friends, and children at any time. This is the condition. The deceased people of his tribal community will love these somber solitudes, and at night, these deserted streets will be thronged with the returning hosts that once filled them and still love this beautiful land. About the title Chief Seattle's speech is very appropriate because the speech delivered by Seattle at Washington in 1854 deals with the speaker's views about the white people. He thanks the white chief for acknowledging the greetings of friendship and goodwill. He speaks in favor of ecological responsibility and respect the Native Americans' land rights. He wants the white people to be just and kind to his tribal people. He appeals to the good father in Washington to protect his tribal people from their ancient enemies. What is the message of this speech? So here, through his speech, Chief Seattle, who belonged to Suquamish tribe, wants to convey that hostilities between white people and his tribal people should end because they lead to revenge and deaths. Thus, in his speech, he strikes a note of reconciliation between his tribal people and the white people. He wants to pursue the path of accommodation of white settlers in the US state of Washington. He also puts forward his arguments in favor of ecological responsibility, and once again I'm stressing it, respect of Native Americans' land rights. He strikes a hope in his speech that their good father in Washington would protect them and his brave warriors would prove to be a great wall of strength against their ancient enemies. Although he is conscious of the fact that they are two distinct races and separate origins and separate destinies. Yet, he strikes a note of optimism when he says that his people will accept the new proposition sent by the white people because it seems to be fair. He concludes on a hopeful note that his people will be free to visit the tombs of their ancestors, friends, and children at any time. So, let's conclude the prose. At the very beginning of the speech, Chief Seattle expresses his concern over environmental degradation and its possible impact upon human civilization if we do not take immediate measures. According to him, nature has been a great sympathizer for his native people for a long time now. Nature has given them everything they need to live on this earth. He fears that though this condition seems to be eternal and changeless, it may ultimately change. Human civilization may face great trouble in future if we don't respect environmental values. Then the speaker ascertains his reliability by comparing his words to the stars that never change. So he will not change his stance in response to the government's proposal of a land treaty with the natives. The white chief, that is the governor, had arrived with the proposal and the message of friendship from the big chief, the president. Seattle says that it is kind of them to offer the natives their goodwill and friendship because he knows that the government has no need of the natives' friendship in return. Seattle speaks of the deplorable condition of his people. He remembers that once they had filled the entire country, but now there are only few people left in their tribes. They are on the verge of an extinction. So, actually, they don't need the vast land anymore. And for this doom of the Red Indians, Seattle mainly accuses the white people's act of forcing their way into the native lands. The white people regard themselves as superior and supreme and do not respect the tribal people's land rights and cultural values. Seattle also criticizes the reckless manners of the young men of his own tribe. According to him, the youths should be more sensible and responsible. Seattle says the president has offered to protect the native women, children, and the old men from the attacks of their old outside enemies like the Hyras, etc. if they agree to the land treaty. In that case, the president would really be their protector, their father. But he doubts if that will be ever possible. According to Seattle, there is so many cultural differences between the white Americans and the red native Indians, that is native red Indians, that a union or a mutual understanding between the two looks unlikely. After all, they are two distinct races with separate origins and separate destinies. The white people have received all the love and care of God. The tribal people have been deprived of the love, guidance, and protection of God and finally come to their meager existence. The native red people of America live closer to nature than the white people. They love the beautiful aspects of nature and understand the importance of maintaining it. To the tribal people, the ashes of their ancestors are sacred and they visit their resting ground to show their respect to those. But as Seattle complains, the white people have no feelings for their ancestors. They wander far from their graves without any regret. Again, the white people don't seem to love this world anymore after they die. So they never visit their people and places again. But the tribal people never forget this beautiful world that gave them being and continue to visit their loved ones to guide, console, and comfort them. Seattle even says that the white people's religion, that is Christianity, is written upon stones so that people never forget it. It is not felt by heart. Their religion is somewhat artificial and mechanical as they have no respect for the environment and for their ancestors. But the native people's religion is the traditions of our ancestors, the dreams of our old men. The chief prepares his people for their impending doom by saying that no one will be spared from the hands of time, death, and decay. Death is a common destiny that the white men too cannot defy. Anyway, Seattle says that he may still agree to the government's proposal. That he says, but should we accept it? I here and now make this condition that we will not be denied the privilege without molestation of visiting at any time the tombs of our ancestors, friends, and children. So the natives should be allowed to visit the resting grounds of their ancestors. He again wants the president to be just and deal kindly with his people. He believes that death is just a change of worlds and the spirits of the natives will still be there after their death to take revenge if they are treated badly. So, children, here we have winded up the prose. For better comprehension and grasp, please read the textbook. Home assignment. Read the given extract and answer the following questions. Yonder sky that has swept tears of compassion upon sends us greetings of friendship and goodwill. Who speaks these words? Give the meaning of yonder sky that has swept tears of compassion upon my people for centuries untold. Second question, why does the speaker say, tomorrow it may be overcast with clouds? Third question, who is the great chief at Washington? What has the great chief done to Seattle and his people? Fourth question, how much are Seattle's words reliable as far as the great chief is concerned? Fifth question, briefly state the reaction of the chief Seattle to the greetings sent by the big chief at Washington. Answer the following questions. First question, state the Red Indians' concern for the environment. Use details from the story to support your answer. Second question, compare the Red Indians' belief system with that of the white men. Thank you all.